Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Well, glad that's over. Good God, from the first possession to the last possession, I felt like it was a crime watching that.
Could you imagine if that game took as long as last week's game with the
Oh
amount
my
of pain?
God. Oh, I mean, I think first off, welcome Bills fans.
Yes.
It's the 20 we can finally put a bow on the 2022 season in
Yes.
whatever color wrapping paper you want to wrap up that turd burger of a game. Oh my goodness. Here's where I sit with this, right? First off, I'm not frustrated that the Bills lost, right? I know it sounds weird, but like I'm thankful for the fact that we had a team to have hope with and to make it this far and to have a legitimate shot at even thinking about doing it.
Yeah.
I'm totally okay with that, right? You lost to a team that looked elite level, like super well coached, game planned for Buffalo perfectly, exploited every weakness that Buffalo had. And Buffalo came in limping as it was, but so did Cincy. They had no offensive line, right? So,
Yeah.
there's a part of me that's thankful for having the opportunity to be disappointed about this, right?
Yeah.
And there's another part of me that wants to burn the whole building to the ground. Like,
Burn it all.
that's it. That's, ugh. Oh,
Yeah.
man.
So, ladies and gentlemen of Hashtag Nation and Bills Mafia, welcome, as we have to do our particulars, to the Hashtag Sports presentation of the Bills versus the Bengals divisional matchup, which was a 27-10 victory for the Cincinnati Bengals, who move on to Kansas City for the AFC Championship game. Obviously, you can find us at all of our socials: TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Tonight's show is sponsored by Mr. Rogers Homes, which is in the description of this video, as well as in association with Crier Media. The Buffalo Bills came out flat, played flat, got dominated in the trenches on both sides of the ball. I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. However, we are going to have a little bit of a mixture tonight. We're going to do our post game. And since it is the last post game of the year, we're going to give you guys a little bit of a teaser on what we're going to be covering in the upcoming weeks. And, obviously a lot of familiar names you guys are going to be talking about that we've been talking about all year, as far as, what do we do with Poyer, Saffold, Phillips, Edmonds. A lot of that stuff is going to be teased tonight, but we may not go into depth. We are back in the car, though, Paul. We're back in the car.
We're officially in the off-season mode, so car episodes abound.
Yeah, and it seems like that entire game, because of the last 8 weeks and how the Buffalo Bills have been playing, it seemed like you always waited for it. Wait for it. Okay, they got another quarter. They're down 14. They've scored in 3 minutes before, and they've mounted a comeback. But when you get this deep into the season, you have teams that don't really make mistakes to let you back into ball games. No turnovers in the whole game, except for that one Josh Allen interception, which didn't mean anything, except for the stat mongers are going to say stuff about it. But other than that, it was just the entire game was like blah. Like you're just like, what are you doing? What is this call? 3rd and 2, you're chucking it 40 yards downfield. What are you doing?
Yeah, the Gabe Davis pass on 3rd and 2. That was
pass.
so frustrating, right? And granted, he dropped the ball. There's that. This game was sort of, I guess the best way for me to phrase it, Mario, is that this was a hallmark of the Bengals having an offensive system and Buffalo having Josh Allen. Right?
Yeah.
Like Buffalo survived on Josh being Josh all season with a limited system. And the Bengals had a game plan and they executed. I was sitting on my couch here in Western New York screaming, why are you playing Jamar Chase while he's in the slot 7 yards off of the linebacker? And then wouldn't you know it, Jamar Chase catches the ball a yard from the line of scrimmage and takes off for 14. It's just, there were times where it was so painfully obvious what Cincinnati was going to do, but the weather did not impact Cincinnati the way that it impacted Buffalo. Not saying that Buffalo was impacted by the weather, but Cincinnati's offense really wasn't. They had a makeshift offensive line, and it seemed like everywhere that Buffalo tried to get value for Brandon Beane from a general manager perspective, all the money they didn't spend, every single dollar you didn't spend at those premier positions came back to haunt you tonight.
You did. And a lot of money was in the locker room. Let's not
There's
say
a
that.
lot of money in the locker room.
Hyde's in
That's
the
right.
locker room. Miller's in the locker room. Daquan Jones is in the locker room. You know, a lot of that money that you had tied up is not even on the field.
Yeah.
And
the offensive line, which you've just pieced together for the last 5 seasons, was dog shit. It was so bad.
Yeah.
Deion Dawkins has been playing terrible for at least the last 3 months. Spencer Brown, all the hope that you had for Spencer Brown going off of last season he just looked like a mirage at this point. You've got whoever is healthy playing guard, and it was just a disaster.
Yeah, really good teams will expose you.
Absolutely, and that's what happened.
And I think it will be echoed in the months to come due to the many changes that may happen, either on the field or off the field as far as the coaches go, guys. A lot of when you get exposed by a really good team like that, it really tells you what you need to work on. Now, Paul, you talked to me right before the broadcast, maybe 30 seconds before. So you had to remember this. I love for you to give #Nation Bills Mafia your comparison to fantasy football, because I know a lot of these guys play fantasy football, guys and gals, and I think it was a great comparison that you said what the difference between the Bills and the Bengals were today.
Yeah, Paul Berg actually kind of talks about it here. So this is a comment earlier in the chat. First off, hey everybody, welcome to the chat.
Yep.
So Paul Berg says every weakness. We were talking about, the Bengals exposing Buffalo's weakness. You mean 80% of the team, a bunch of average players except for Allen Diggs, Knox, and Milano. Now I'm not going to agree with that exactly, right? But what I am going to say is that the Bills, in order to get Brandon Beane as much resources as possible, it's kind of like when you have a fantasy football team that you're really comfortable with. It's a really well-balanced team, and you're just kind of absent like those 1, 2, or 3 best positional players on your fantasy roster. Everybody's just really good. The problem is that when you have everybody that's really good, you can't trade for elite level players. You can't make those elite level moves because you just don't have the resources to do it. And Buffalo is kind of the same way. And ultimately, those fantasy football teams that are really well balanced are paper tigers, right? You get one injury and now all of a sudden it's like, well, I can't make a move because my team, I can't go anywhere. The team that I built, ultimately, we can't ascend any higher. It's comfortable. And I think that's kind of where, when you're looking at Buffalo, I'll be honest, guys, like look at your receiver group, right? You had Diggs, you had Gabe Davis, who dropped a pass tonight and has really not been excellent throughout the vast majority of the season, unfortunately. And then, look at the resources. This wide receiver group was so bad. They brought a player out of retirement and signed somebody who they had cut 2 seasons ago, who couldn't latch on with another team. Like, that's how bad your receiver group was, and it was how inept your offense was becoming. And I'm sure there's a variety of reasons for that. But tonight was kind of what I think a lot of us were worried could show up based off of the previous 4 weeks. Like, Demar, do you think that's unfair to say?
No, it's not unfair to say. And before I even get to my point, I want to Vita Vega coming in for obviously the hashtag charity for 2022-2023 Williams Syndrome Foundation comes in big time. Thanks for the season worth of great shows. You guys are consistently awesome. Thank you. And the Williams Syndrome Foundation, thanks you so much, Mr. Vita Vega. It's not unfair to say, because you're sitting at it, you're looking at it. Probably we won't know the full details of whether or not Allen wanted Brown back and Beasley or what. But the fact is, you had to go get 2 over 30 receivers to try to get some attention away from Stephon Diggs. Well, isn't that what your offensive coordinator is for? To try to design certain things, to try. You know what? I think Dorsey treated this season like a marathon, like a sprint, not a marathon, in the fact that he showed his hand way too early in the season, so that there was such an early book on him for the utilization of Diggs as the primary guy. And then, okay, well, no, you have to go, second and third read and all this other stuff. And then just the total ineptitude to try to get something of a run game going. But it was at obvious times when the run, you knew the Bills were running. So the teams
Mhm.
planned against that, and they were able to see right through some of the things.
Right.
First time offensive coordinator, guys. I mean, good. You could talk about all the stats you want with Allen putting up similar stats that he did last year, but a lot of that, how many of that was just him scrambling, getting out of the pocket, play breaking down, and he just becomes an athlete? I
Mhm.
think if you look over the season of tape that is on Allen and this Buffalo Bills team in 2022, you're going to see the fact that he was making a lot of that stuff up on the fly, playing backyard football, and it wasn't necessarily play design. I mean, how many times,
Yeah.
Paul, do we see two receivers in the same spot when Allen throws the
Oh,
ball?
weekly,
Weekly.
multiple times
You
a week.
can't have
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's a
No.
miscommunication, either from the OC. I'm interested to
You know,
see where Joe Brady ends up.
Yeah, we could. So Joe Brady's a quarterbacks coach, former offensive coordinator from the Carolina Panthers that Buffalo
Yeah.
brought in this year when Dorsey went from quarterbacks coach to offensive coordinator. So I think there's a lot of things at play here. First off, I was thrilled about the signing of Aaron Kromer as your offensive line coach. That's done. He won't be back. I'd be shocked if he returns, right? Because as you know, when you get an offensive line coach, normally you get one guy who's played with you to come in and help install, right? That was Roger Saffold.
Yep, and
And
he's a free agent.
and I just don't see Cromer back, right? Dorsey, this was bad. And even if and in frustration, like in about the middle of the third quarter, I had said to my wife, I said, you know what, honey, even if Josh Allen came in and had a system exactly like the Bengals, right? Exactly, with playmakers at every corner of the field from a skill position standpoint. I don't think he'd run the system, right? I still think that Josh would be Josh, right? And there's a lot of times Josh leaves a lot of meat on the bone there. And there's times where he pulls you out of the depths of despair, takes you and puts the team on his back. But there's a lot of times where he leaves a lot of meat left on the bone out there. And I don't know if Josh, even if you came in with somebody with a system specifically designed for him, I think he'd still struggle to run it. Not saying that he's not talented. I just know he just has the heart of a dog. And at some point that hurts you. And I think today you saw, and throughout the last half of the season, you saw that start to hurt you.
Well, I would respectfully disagree with that assessment initially, Paul. Now, Allen knows how to improvise now. I mean, he's got that down. He can improvise if you need him to. He can go and do things on his own. If you had an actual system, not to say if Dable was here another year, I don't know about that. But if you had a system that he could fit into, then he could ad lib after that. He could still fit in the constructs of the system, I think, if you wanted to put that around him, because he's already had to do it once. I think if you brought in a guy that had a very successful system, he would be okay, and then he would be able to ad lib and do certain things. Kind of like, I don't want to say to this degree because I don't want to compare these two guys, because one guy's in the AFC Championship game and Allen's going home.
Sure.
But Andy Reid there were so many question marks about Andy Reid taking Mahomes. He's like, he's in a spread offense at Texas Tech. Well, what's he going to do with the West Coast with Andy Reid? He's not going to survive there. So you saw Mahomes' improvisation with Andy Reid's scheme, and look where 5 consecutive AFC Championship games they're in.
Yep.
So I think if you gave Allen similar discipline and framework as far as the offense goes, it would probably be very similar. But as of right now, it's like when he plays backyard football and he just ad libs, that's when he becomes an athlete. But you can't rely on that when he ends up getting to be 30, 31, 32 years old.
Yeah. Well, and there was a great comment that was just put in there by Vita Vega. He said, "I can't believe we wasted Josh Allen's rookie contract." That's actually a great point, right? I wouldn't say it was a waste. A lot has been accomplished since Josh was drafted. A lot for this franchise. So I don't want to call it a waste. I think that's probably an exaggeration, right? Yeah. But it is a valid point, because you look at Kansas City and you see them starting to, since they're paying their quarterback $500 million or whatever it is, you see them have to bargain basement hunt for skill players, right?
And then there are some skill players that didn't take huge deals other places because they wanted to play with Mahomes.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
That's very true. And they start having, but you have to assess that value somewhere, right? Buffalo right now, you've got a tackle problem, right?
Yes.
Your offensive tackles
Both.
are both subpar at from this season. Just to look at let's just take the last 8 games. You take the last 8 games of the season and you grade your positions. You have a tackle problem, which is funny because they drafted back-to-back tackles in the previous draft, right? So they knew that this was a problem, didn't address it at all in the offseason. So you have a tackle issue. You have no guards. You have no guards.
Nope.
Mitch Morris is a concussion away from being spoon-fed, unfortunately, right? Like you have to address your center position. There's no offensive line position that's a lock, in my opinion. Deion Dawkins is because of his contract, but outside of that, there's no promises across that offensive line. You need to rebuild nearly that entire thing. Outside of Diggs, Gabe Davis is walking into a contract year, and I'll be honest with you, you needed resources at the wide receiver position, and you got Khalil Shakur, which I'm really excited about, but I'm not going to put my faith in a guy taking 18 snaps a game.
Yeah.
That's not safety blanket for me. You roll over to the other side of the ball. You have Jordan Poyer, who is most certainly going to sign in Miami next season because he will not be back in Buffalo. You have Micah Hyde, who had a neck injury. You don't even know if he's ever going to play again. You've got Tremaine Edmonds in a contract year because his contract's now expired. And then you've paid all this money to defensive tackles for what? Right? Your entire budget was assessed across your defensive line, and that helped you zero today. Like zero. The Bills had the 27th worst pass rush since Von Miller's exit. And you put all those resources in your defense, and people can get frustrated with Sean McDermott saying it's a defensive system, but in the NFL, you score points. They felt they had enough resources to score enough points, so their goal became, let's try to stop points. It's a theory. The downside is it's a steep slope on the other side of 2022.
It is. It is a very steep slope because you have a lot of players. Now, let me just read this off for you guys. You'll hear this in the upcoming weeks, and we're going to be talking about it quite a bit. But just to name a few for you guys, free agents for Buffalo Bills come March 14th, I think it is. Can't really remember. Jordan Poyer, Roger Saffold's contract is voided. Jordan Phillips' contract is voided out. You got Tremaine Edmonds, Jamison Crowder, Shaq Lawson, AJ Klein, Cole Beasley, Devin Singletary, and Dane Jackson, and Jaquan Johnson. So even if you is this a situation where Poyer is going to be gone? You don't know about Hyde. You don't know about Hamlin. You have to sign Jaquan Johnson? Is this he's the only guy in the building? Are they going to treat him like the defensive version of Isaiah McKenzie? Be like, we'll give him a 2-year deal of $8 million. He'll stay. What is going on? He's 28 years old. I mean, there's a lot of things that are coming about, and a lot of the names on that free agent list are 30 and above. Yep. And they were just, you know what? We're going to take our shot this year. And then obviously, everyone's putting Oliver in the chat. He has his 5th-year option coming up.
Yep.
Okay. You already gave him his 5th-year option. Poyer gone already. Yeah, Aaron, if that was Jordan Poyer's last play in Buffalo, I mean, I think he was down in that same end zone where Aaron Williams ended his career.
Unfortunately. I think that was I think you're right.
If you guys remember,
I think that's right.
But you know what, Paul? It was funny too. We're going to try to provide you guys with something to try to level out the heads tonight before you go to bed, because obviously there's not going to be a Bills victory Monday. But the point is this: I had people blowing up my phone, as Paul did, saying, "You okay? You all right?"
Yeah.
I'm like, listen, we started this show in the thick of the drought, so we've covered this team multiple years. This is our 10th year doing this, guys. I mean, we want to hope for the best of this team, and we try to give you guys our analysis on how the team can get better and what moves they should make. But we're also in uncharted territory in the fact that you came into the season with such high hopes. A lot of people picked the Buffalo Bills to go to the Super Bowl and to make that next step. But now you have a lot of these holes that are appearing, and you don't have the finances. Usually the Bills would have the finances because they didn't have any big name players with big contracts. Now you're shelling out money here, you're shelling out money there, you're doing this. Paul Berg, 100%. been here since 200 subs, and we're so glad you're still here, Paul. We appreciate you, man.
Well, and I think you bring up an interesting point, right? So if you look at the Bills next season, Josh has got a $40 million salary cap number. Diggs is 20, Von Miller's 18, Trey is 16, Deion Dawkins is 15, right? And here's the problem that you have is this season the Bills pushed all the chips into the middle of the table financially, 100%. Right? They kept reworking deals and reworking deals and reworking deals and reworking deals. And the problem there is it pushes future cap dollar, right? Now the Bills there's going to be a salary cap increase next offseason. There always is, right? So the salary
pretty
cap
much cover
the
depth of that. They're 8 under, they're 8 over right now.
Yeah, they're 8.5 over the salary cap right now, and they don't even have enough players for that. They only have 39 players on contracts.
And that's the dangerous territory we always talk about.
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean. So financially they're in some trouble. And it makes you have to address things a little bit of a different way. But like it's troubling to me, right? When you see that you have no flexibility, right? Because the Bills really did push all the chips into the table, and they don't have a lot of flexibility going into next year. They really don't. They just don't have a lot of flexibility in 2023, and that makes you have to depend on hitting in the draft, and being able to secure free agents that are going to help you, much unlike Jamison Crowder never helped you at all this season, right? You went out and you snagged Xavier Rhodes off and he played for you for a little bit and then he was gone. You never got that piece that was going to help you in 2023 through this process, right? You got the piece that helped you kind of for right now, but you never were able to get something that was going to help you next year because you needed players like Isaiah Hodges, who you lost to the Giants, right? You needed players on those base level contracts who were going to play for you. And unfortunately, that was the Bills' entire secondary at one point, right? And the downside there is a lot of them were incumbents. DeMar Hamlin was not the starter. Jaquan Johnson lost that job, and he had been here for 3 seasons. There was no reason for Jaquan Johnson to play like dog water, yet he played like dog water. It's terrible. You gave Teron Johnson a ton of money. And I bet you wish you had that back right now because Teron Johnson was a complete ghost today, as far as I'm concerned. There's times where
trouble today.
Yeah, but my point is that you got these players, like you're going to lose Poyer this year, right? Mm-hmm. You should already have the incumbent ready. And if that was Jaquan Johnson, that's not going to work out. If that was DeMar Hamlin, it's probably not going to work out. You got to completely rebuild your safety position. And that's what ran this offense, not to mention the fact you're probably going to lose your middle linebacker because you can't afford to re-sign him. And, there's a lot of problems here, like a lot of problems that don't just start and end at the Bengals game. The Bengals did something dangerous. They showed the rest of the NFL exactly where you're weak, where other teams struggled to do that. And that makes 2023 all the much harder.
Yeah. I want to just kind of break for a second and let Paul show you his genius really quick. I don't know if you guys could see this on my screen. This is Josh Allen's current contract, obviously for currently 2022. This is his contract. You see the $11.7 million prorated bonus. See how these there's 2 zeros down here. Mm-hmm. Paul, can you explain why those zeros are there?
Yeah, so when Josh signed his extension, you can only put signing bonus money across 5 years of a contract, right?
Yes.
So that's why you see it in 2022. Like you can only do it for so many years. You can only stretch signing bonus money across so many years. So what you'll see in 2023 is Josh is going to restructure his deal again, and that's to, again, push money. The problem is that you can't just say, well, we'll just do another year of $11 million at the end of the contract. It doesn't work like that. No. If you're going to restructure $20 million, that $20 million is going to be $4 million across 5 years. So it's not even. So you're always kind of chasing your tail, and there's always going to be 1 year that's just a massive amount of money in that prorated bonus.
Roughly around 32 is where that second year is. But a lot of the times when we talk about opening up cap space, that's what the teams will do. The quarterback will move some of this base salary over to the bonus and then prorate it over the next 5. Mm-hmm. So it'll open up a little bit more money that where'd the Bills get this from? You know what I mean? And stuff like that will happen. So we're just some of the previews of some of the things that we're going to be talking about as far as when Paul ends up talking about that and prorating it over 5 years, that's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're going to do, obviously, we're going to go position by position when we do these episodes, and we're going to tell you, where the holes are, what they need to do. Obviously, you're going to need some more, you need some more playmakers on the outside with Diggs.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, his escalator goes in for next season as well. Von Miller as well. Buffalo Bills, however, with Von Miller's contract, as big as it is, they planned for this. They planned for something like that. A lot of his salary is tied up in base in case he was to retire and or have an injury.
Mm-hmm.
So he'll be going into next season at 34. His cap number was 5 this year. It'll be 18 next year, and then 21 after that. But the 21 is tied up with a lot of base salary. So given that the Bills can try to find a few bucks here and there to try to sign the players that they really covet. But as of right now, I mean, me and Paul have to go through the numbers. We're going to try to figure out how they can try to get some of this money for some of these key players. And as he said, some of the free agents that we have, if you happen to lose Hyde, that's another $10 million because his contract is voided after 2024.
Right.
So
and there's players who you're going to be paying in 2023 that aren't even going to be on the team. Jordan Phillips has a voided year. He's going to be paid money. He's technically on the books for 2023, but he's not playing. Roger Saffold's on the books. He's not going to play.
If you guys remember
these voided years.
Yeah. If you guys remember the Emmanuel Sanders contract, it's the same thing. Like we're still paying Sanders. Yeah. You have a voided year in order to prorate. So if you say, I'm going to pay this guy $5 million, well, you void out a year. So it's 2.5 each year, but you're still counting that against the books as far as your cap goes. So that's the problem that they run into there.
So, Mar, let's just imagine for a moment that you have to fix this team in the draft.
Oh, boy.
Let's just imagine, right? You're in the basement of the first round because you made it this far, right? So what to you becomes the biggest priority to draft versus the biggest priority in free agency, right? Because we've seen Buffalo do this before where, like, they say, we're not going to draft any guards. We're going to draft tackles, and then we're going to just sign the guards in the offseason, right?
Yes.
And that chicken has finally come home to roost. This mix didn't work out well. While it was fine in previous seasons, just fine, right? The offensive line I never would say has been great since Josh got here, but it was fine in previous seasons. This year, clearly not that. So, like, that's an example, though, of where Buffalo's kind of tipped their hat, right? Where they're not going to draft a guard. They draft tackles. They've proven that over time. They draft tackles. They never draft guards.
You've even said that multiple times. You don't draft guards.
They don't draft guards. Yeah.
You don't draft guards. I mean, we saw one of the best guards in recent history, Quentin Nelson. What happened to him?
Yeah.
Where else do you put him? Because at least when you draft tackles, and as the old adage goes, if you draft a tackle and he happens to struggle a little bit, you drop him down to guard to try to hide him. Those guys, that's what happens when they get up in their careers sometimes. Some of them tackles will drop down to guards, and they can extend their career 3 or 4 years.
Right.
So as far as it goes, I would have to take a look at the free agency market and see who is there. Now, you and I have talked many times. There's not going to be tackles on the free agent market, which is why you draft them.
Right.
Guards will be on the free agent market all the time.
Right.
So that's why the Buffalo Bills happen to go that route. They happen to take some familiarity, obviously, with Cromer coming over, as we mentioned earlier. He wanted to have Roger Saffold here. Okay, that's number one. If you bring in a new offensive line coach, you can just book that there's going to be a guy that's a $3-4 million guy that's just going to come with him to try to install the offense with you. That's just a given at this point. As far as the Buffalo Bills go, Paul, we had an episode a long time ago where we said, because you're paying your quarterback now and that window of his rookie deal is over.
Yep.
This is the offensive line that you're stuck with. You can't have huge numbers on your offensive line or else your defense is going to suffer then.
Right.
So the Buffalo Bills, like you said, they thought that they were good on the offensive side of the ball. We're just going to keep this train moving. We're going to keep dumping quarters in the machine, and this offense will just roll. We need defensive line help. And by and large, they were right. I mean, you think about it, that the year that Edmonds had, I know a lot of people will be down on Edmonds. A lot of people want him re-signed. And then you see Milano, all pro. That's what happens when you keep bodies off of Milano. But
Right.
you're talking about a guy who's a converted safety.
Right.
Coming down and playing linebacker. That's the system that you have in Buffalo right now.
Mm-hmm.
If you decide, or if Frazier decides to leave, I don't know after today how he gets another head coaching gig. Unfortunately, I've been hammering the table. He still deserves one. I don't think one game defines the guy, but for what he was able to do, taking a 5th and a 6th round cast off and making him the best safety tandem pair in the league.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? He should get a look. If he happens to leave or, God forbid, retire, and you bring in a new defensive coach, it's going to be what McDermott wants. It's going to be along the lines of what McDermott wants.
Yeah. So before we get too far, let's because I do want to respond to that. Thanks to Johnny for the super chat. Of course, all super chats are going to the hashtag Sports Charity Foundation, the Williams Syndrome Foundation. It says, feels like we going from Super Bowl contenders for the next 10 years to we need to rebuild. Make it make sense. I need positivity.
All right, we got you, Johnny.
I think the long and short of it is most teams have given up an incredible amount of resources to maybe get a quarterback that is 65% of what Josh Allen is.
Yes.
Right. So there is a lot of positivity there. That people will come to Buffalo to play on this team because you can win the game at any moment with Josh. Right. With that being said, I do want to harken back to a point that we just mentioned. The last guard that got drafted by the Buffalo Bills was Wyatt Teller. He was the last true guard drafted by the Buffalo Bills.
Don't bring up that ghost of Christmas.
No,
past.
I'm just saying it's just a fact, right?
It
was
100%.
2018. He was the last true guard drafted. Since then, they've drafted multiple offensive linemen. Most recently,
none of them really high though.
2021, nope. You drafted Spencer Brown, Tommy Doyle, and Jack Anderson. Tackle.
All third rounder later, though.
5th, and 7th. Yeah. And this last season, Luke Tenuta, who is now a Green Bay Packer. So that worked out well. That was a 6th round pick.
Well, Anderson went to the Eagles, didn't he?
I believe that's right.
And played in a playoff game last year.
Well, drafting tackles, you lose them. That's the hole, right? That's the thing that I think Bean is figuring out is when you draft tackles late, you're like, listen, we'll put a quarter in the machine, right? To take your reference from a minute ago. Hey, listen, we'll play the lottery. That's okay. But when you have players, you have to waive them to get them to your practice squad. And when they're on your practice squad, any team can sign them, and every team wants tackles. Yes. They all need them. Every team needs tackles. So by always drafting tackles, but never being able to retain or develop any of them, what's the point? Right? True. What's the point? You're just wasting those picks. What are you doing wasting those picks? And I think that's where Buffalo has been in trouble the last few years is they've lost a lot of their late picks, or their late picks were ones that ultimately couldn't really contribute. So we'll just go down the list real quick. The last 2 drafts, just as an example, right? We'll start from the top and work our way down. And I want you to tell me who was helpful for the Bills the last 6 weeks from the people they've drafted. Ready? Kaiir Elam.
Showed up in Miami.
I think he had to play, right? First round pick. He had to contribute. He was a disappointment the entire first half of the season. I'm not upset with Elam at this point, right? James Cook, I think underutilized, right?
I think he started to show what he could do near the end of the year, but I don't think they fully trusted him because I don't know if he had enough time on task. And that's what
he is very poor in pass protection.
Very,
Terrell Bernard.
He non-existent.
Yep. Khalil Shakur. I'm excited about Shakur.
Potential.
Yeah.
And you hate that.
Punt God. All right, then. Christian Benford.
Can't stay healthy.
Right. Luke Tenuta, not even on the team.
Uses.
Yeah. Bale Inspector.
Healthy scratch every week.
Greg Rousseau, who's ghost today. Total ghost.
100% Groot. Yeah.
Yep. Boogie.
I mean, go DLDL first and second round. They're going to play.
Yeah, that's
true. But he had a pass breakup. He did okay, trying to set the edge sometimes. He also had a very, very costly offsides early in the game. That led to their second touchdown. Yeah.
Spencer Brown
still needs work.
A lot of work.
You guys, right? All the guys that you've mentioned, Elam, Cook, Bernard, even Spector, Rousseau, Basham, Brown, physical specimens.
Yeah.
They're physically gifted in what they do.
Yep.
And that's what the Bills go for. And they say, listen, we don't want to have to try to get these guys that need to develop physically. We want these guys that are already physically developed. All we got to do is put them in the right spots.
Yep.
And they weren't in the right spots today.
Nope. Well, let's finish off this, right? Tommy Doyle.
Deuces.
Yep. Marquez Stevenson.
Not even here.
Yep. DeMar Hamlin, obviously.
Yes.
Rashad Wildgoose, not on the team anymore. Jack Anderson, not on the team anymore.
Yeah.
You can't lose your value picks when you're paying a quarterback $40 million.
Yeah, when you have those, that's how many draft picks is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 16 draft picks.
Mm-hmm.
Majority of them not with the team anymore. And that was after a draft that you mailed in after you got your number one wide receiver.
Yep.
You know, it's like, oh boy. Now, the year before that, Epineza, Moss, Davis, Fromm, Bass, Hodges, and Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Jackson plays a significant amount. Davis plays a significant amount. You were able to flip Moss for Hines, which worked out.
Yeah.
To a degree. I mean, you have 2 years of him now instead of Moss.
Right.
And you overlapped the running back position. Does that mean that Naeem Hines is the starter next year? Well, if you don't sign Singletary, you're picking another third-round back.
Right, but what? But then again, you're back to we have two backs that are the same, right?
Exactly.
Because now you have Hines and you have Cook, and
neither one of them run inside.
Right. Yeah.
Neither one of them, unless you want to just go the zone rushing scheme. And then Davis, you're going to have to make a decision on.
Right. And then you look at the rest of that 2020 draft, Mario, right? Because you had Epineza, who, again, I'm not thrilled with.
No.
Moss, Gabe Davis, who's, all these guys are walking into contract years now. Jake Fromm not on the team anymore. Tyler Bass is walking into a contract year. Isaiah Hodges is, was catching touchdowns for the Giants. And then Dane Jackson, who's walking into a contract year.
Mm-hmm.
Who I don't think anybody was thrilled to see Dane Jackson play. Just like we weren't thrilled to see Christian Benford play. Just like we weren't thrilled to see Jaquan Johnson play. But this is what happens when you build your team like this.
Yeah, and you have to try to do that. I mean,
Yep.
you have to try. I mean, there are still a lot of players that were on this team. Like if we'll do a comprehensive one with going back to when Bean and McDermott started. Obviously, Bean's first draft was Josh Allen. McDermott's first draft was Tre'Davious White. Obviously, we'll go through all of those, and we'll talk about each of those players as well and what they would need to do this offseason. Mueller came in. He said, "Are Poyer and Emmons both gone this offseason?"
I'm funny you say that. I just put it up on screen. I'm glad.
Bigger loss, in my opinion. You know what? For the skill set you have at the linebacker position, obviously, it's going to be a huge loss for you. I'm not saying Braylon Spector is your guy in there, but there's a reason they drafted him.
Mm-hmm.
There is a reason. I mean, and you know what? That's one of those positions, though, in free agency, you just don't pick those guys up and plug and play. That's not how it works, especially in this kind of a defense. It just doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the positions that, you have to determine what are positions that you draft and develop, what are positions that you could pick up in free agency.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to pick up tackles in free agency because everybody wants them. You'll pick up guards. So you can draft tackles, not guards. Middle linebackers, inside linebackers, whatever in this offense when they play nickel 80% of the time. You're going to sit there. Linebackers you have to draft. Corners, a CB2 you can pick up, which they've done multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And you have your cornerbacks for next year, essentially. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got Elam and White. Give White another offseason to come back. He'll be okay. Mm-hmm. Your running back position is pretty much set unless you got to pick up another free agent running back. Obviously, because you're going to have Cook and Hines. Right. You need a guy that's going to hammer it up inside. Do you go tight end in this draft? Do you go? You just
sign Knox to a large extension.
I know, but the point is this: if you're going to have two outside runners, you better have two outside blockers.
Paul Berg knows what's up. Paul Berg knows what's up. Listen, I wanted McDuffie out of Boston College.
I know you did.
So bad. But again, those are the things that frustrate you when you have a player walking into a contract year and they're not developing the position, right?
No.
So you really thought Braylon Spector was going to replace Tremaine Edmonds?
No,
exactly right.
No, I mean, this is why you're going to have to draft another rookie.
Right.
And you really thought
Terrell Bernard was going to replace Tremaine Edmonds? No, but I will be honest, guys. You can't afford Tremaine Edmonds. You can't afford him.
No,
He's going to be
$100
$100 million player. You
he is
can't
going into
afford
his second deal when most guys come into the league.
Mhm.
That is something you can't put a price tag on. Like if he was 27, it'd be very different. 16 mil for a zone corner.
Vic makes, but Vic, when I understand exactly what you're saying here, and I'm not going to disagree with you, but I am going to say that when you don't have a $16 million corner, you get Dane Jackson, you get Christian Benford, you get that. That's what you get. So you got to understand what you're dealing with there. And unfortunately, the Bengals offense was tailor-made to beat the piss out of Leslie Frazier defense, right? Because they're just, these corners, the secondary is not aggressive enough, right? All game, regardless of score, I had to watch Buffalo play 7 yards off the line of scrimmage. For what reason, I still don't understand, right? The whole game. And that's where I think you look at Frazier and you say, we got it. Oh, dust off Ramon Humber. Thanks a lot for that, MP. But I think there comes a point where you say it's finally time. You have to reinvent the defense because you've kept the band together for a really long time, right?
Yes.
You kept the core players together for a really, really long time.
Longer than most teams do.
You got it's time. You got to get them gone.
Yeah, I think here's what happened. Here's what threw a monkey in the wrench, Paul. You had Hyde and Poyer back there, and then you drafted Hamlin and Jaquan Johnson, thinking that they would be the incumbents. They would go in there and you would pay those guys. Johnson didn't do very, very well. And the status on Hamlin is unknown.
Right.
Like now you got to go back to the drawing board. Now,
totally.
Yep. If you have a choice, I want the chat to put this together for me. Emotions aside, you can have Edmonds, Oliver, or Poyer. Which one you taking? Which one are you taking? Like, obviously, not many people are going to be high on Oliver. Remember, he has his 5th-year option, so he's going to be here for another season.
10 mil.
10 mil. And you got Edmonds and Poyer. So what are you doing? What are you going to do with that? It's like the Buffalo Bills have shown you their recipe so far is that they're going to get free agent defensive linemen. They can get free agent defensive linemen to try to plug the hole up in there. Did they miss on Oliver? No, at the time it was the pick.
Oliver was getting double and tripled today.
Yeah,
like they knew where their bread was buttered, right? And the thing is that you spent an absolute incredible amount of money and resources at the other defensive tackle position, yet Ed Oliver is still getting double and triple teamed, and you still can't generate a pass rush.
Nope.
That's
blitzing the corners off the edge had to stop today.
Well, and Mario, I'm just going to put it out there. We have 100 people in so thank you so much for everybody watching. Don't forget the video, subscribe if you're not. I will tell you I love when you try to do those. Yeah, I'm terrible.
Those little mid rolls.
Yeah. So my biggest concern for Buffalo is the fact that you lost so much when you lost Dable, right? Because you lose parts of your front office there, right? Because when the Giants hired Dable, they're like, so who do you know in the front office over in Buffalo? Right? You lose guys. You lose scouting department guys. You lose strength and conditioning coaching guys. You lose position coaches. Like, it's not just the head coach that goes. You lose other pieces, but nobody in the Buffalo media will talk about it because it's never seen as important. This draft coming up, it's going to be probably your most challenging draft as an organization since McDermott got here, because you've lost so many pieces the last 2 seasons to other organizations, just shown last year, and you're going to continue to lose pieces there.
You got 6 picks.
Okay.
You got to make those 6, 8.
Yep.
100%. You need to make those 6, 8. And then not to mention the fact that, what do we always say all the time? Vic reminds me of Schottenheimer. that is my ultimate fear of Josh Allen, is that he gets to the postseason all the time, maybe wins a wild card here and there, and
so he turns into Phillip Rivers.
I don't want him to be Phillip Rivers. We don't need that here. So you have first 4 picks and then 2 5th-rounders for the Buffalo Bills. Okay. Also, you're the hunted in the division. Other teams, they're like tiers of teams, how they always like to do that stuff. Okay, Buffalo Bills, are trying to equip their team to beat the Chiefs and to beat the Bengals now. Now they have to equip their team to beat the Bengals. Every other team in your division is equipping their teams to beat you first, because you got to take care of your division. The Buffalo Bills feel with their offense and their defense and their talent, they could take care of their division no problem.
Can we just put in a transfer request to the NFC, because it's a joke over there?
It's dog water over there. Can we go to the NFC South, please?
Can we just go to the NFC? Can we just transfer to the NFC? Because there's not a quarterback in the NFC that I'm worried about at all.
That's
zero. There's literally not a single quarterback in the NFC that I think is better than Josh Allen. Not one. They're all in the AFC. All the good quarterbacks are in the AFC.
Stop it, Mueller. Don't even bring up Danny in here. I love Danny. He's one of my top 3 quarterbacks of all time. I love Danny. So good.
But, I think this game was an interesting testament to an odd season, because there was just no identity at all on either side of the ball, right? When you lost Vaughn, you lost your entire pass rush. It was your entire pass rush in one
Think
player.
of the contract that you gave him.
Right. Elite level player. You give him that contract.
I mean, when we talk about the Buffalo Bills push their chips all the way to the middle of the table, that's what they did with Von Miller. Now, with that money, you could have gotten another guard here, another corner there.
Yep.
For the money you gave on.
Or re-signed Tremaine Edmonds, or re-signed Matt Milano, or to a bigger deal, or re-sign Jordan Poyer, or the list goes on.
So you thought going into this season, I mean, the Bills went 13-3 this year. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't forget that happened. And you know what? The Buffalo Bills, I believe, defensively went into the season saying, we have Von Miller, so we're good with a 7th round Dane Jackson. We're good with a rookie 1st round corner. We're good with Trey not coming back till after Thanksgiving. We're good with all these other guys. And you know what? With Von in there, they were.
Yeah.
They were fine. They were cruising. Yeah. But when you remove him from the equation, and it starts to expose the other parts of your team when you don't have that pass rush. Like you said in the beginning, they were 4th with Vaughn. They were 27th without. And they were just doing patchwork at that point.
Right. Yep.
Totally
true.
Could have went after Bradbury.
Yeah. But it's a completely valid point, right?
Yeah. 100%.
It's a completely valid point. And G-Rock asked a very interesting question. What are you going to do with that 1st round pick? Is there more value in bodies at this point? Right.
I think that there are so many teams that are going to want the quarterback. Go back in for a quarterback. Now, you and I both know if you take a quarterback out of the top 10, you're hamstringing yourself. You're handicapping yourself. We know that.
Right.
Other teams do not know that. They should watch our
show. Apparently.
Point being is, or for anybody, it doesn't have to be a quarterback, but guys love to jump back into the 1st round because there may be some 1st round graded talent that they have on their board that might not necessarily be on Buffalo's board. Right now, picks are more valuable than taking BPA. Right now, I'm saying right now, as of January 22nd, 2023, right now, picks are more valuable than taking your best player available in there. Okay, I understand it could change to the path of the draft is what we're going to do, but it's right now. I would get more picks.
I think is so. I actually disagree with you here. So, talking about what we just talked about, right? Where your scouting department is going to get ransacked, right? You're losing a lot of talent in places that, isn't reported, right? It's just organizational shifting, right? Because people follow other people in the NFL. I think what you do is you say, I can't trust the late scouting, right? The late player scouting. So I'm just going to get as few picks as possible. And I'm just going to go. I'm going to take the players that I have to trade up to get, right? I'm just going to, if I walk away with 3 players, but they're 3 third round or higher players, then that's what I walk away with. And if they're the ones that I want, then I'm going to accept that. The problem is that McDermott's philosophy on playing rookies, it hurts you this year.
It does.
It hurts you. And I understand because we've defended it, right? McDermott, it has this time on task theory, right? Where you have to have so many snaps, right? Across in order to be considered time on task. There's a book that talks about it. I don't know. Mario's the teacher. It's a math teacher. He doesn't read either. So
how dare you?
Am I
Einstein's
wrong?
theory of relativity is a very long-winded passage.
In any case,
no, but what you're saying
but
is,
what I'm saying,
you're
what I'm saying
contradicting
is,
your other comment, though, Paul. You're contradicting the fact that the admission to protect Allen
Mhm.
for that ride is very, very expensive. You don't want
Yeah.
to put a guy in there like Cook, as we stated earlier, who struggles in pass pro. You don't want to
Sure.
put him in there with Allen; he gets killed. So the
Mhm.
time on task, as far as that goes, protecting your franchise, I believe. But on the defensive side of the ball, you think that window should be narrower for Bean and Frazier, or McDermott and Frazier, because they are defensive guys.
Right.
So
MP. I mean, this doesn't shock me that there's going to be story about Stephon Diggs being unhappy, right?
yeah.
This isn't a shock. He was John at Allen on the sideline. You know, when he threw that long pass to Gabe, you know, like it.
Vic
I
had
get
another
it.
question on here, Paul. I'd like you to take this
Sure.
one. Is Bean a better late round drafter than early round?
So that's an interesting question. For Buffalo or for other organizations? Right?
Because we've seen a lot of his players go to other. I know.
Right.
I said,
but that's true, right? So,
well, I don't like what we talked about before. I don't know if you got here, what time you got here, Vic, but we were talking about the fact that, you know, a lot of those guys that Bean has taken, we don't know how many guys went to the Giants with Schoen.
Mhm.
We don't know.
Right.
We don't know who went there.
But I think that, you know, Buffalo has generated a lot of NFL talent in those late round spots, right?
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't all been for Buffalo, which is the nature of those late round spots. Your team had a lot of depth, a lot of veteran depth on it, and they're going to have to start putting their trust in younger players sooner.
I agree.
And that is, this year is not a fair representation of that, because they had to trust really young players in the secondary very early, but that wasn't on purpose. That was solely because of the position that they kind of were willing to accept with Trey. I think they expected Elam to play right away, because that's one thing we talk about. Time on task with McDermott doesn't apply to first round players, right? If you're a first round player, you're starting. That's it. You're a starter.
Yeah.
You get drafted in the first round, you're starting. Elam really struggled when he first got out there.
He did.
You know?
I mean, we were talking about a guy that came from Florida. They play a lot of man in college, Paul. We went over this a bunch of times. Yep. It's weird. And then when you have to try to go and trust his own scheme, it's tough. And I really think that they thought that having Von Miller in there, they were going to be able to survive, because they were going to be able to generate pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Von was going to be their Julius Peppers that they had in Carolina. Like, hey, we could take guys that are off the street in first, second rounds and put them in there, and maybe a seventh rounder, put them in there, and they'll be fine. And it just didn't work out. But as far as, I know a lot of you guys are asking who you blame the most. All right, I'll let Paul, before I let Paul answer this question, I just wanted to remind the Hashtag Nation, we're going to be in the car again. We're going to bring you guys some episodes. Hit up that community tab, hit up our Twitter, hit up our Instagram, anything you guys want. I mean, we're gonna unleash on Hashtag Nation, and we're gonna be mixing up things a little bit this year. We're gonna be covering some more of the NFL, so to speak, but obviously we have our different slant on it where we cover it. How does, you know, there was a trade between two teams in the AFC. How does this affect the Bills? But we're going to be covering other parts of the NFL as well, just so you guys know. All right, Paul, who do you most blame for the loss today?
So I there's no, you can't score 10 points in a playoff game.
No.
I mean, I don't know how else to say it. That you have to, like, the thing that got me was I didn't see any play be effective for Buffalo. Right? No. They went into halftime, they came back, and it seemed like they had it figured out. And then Cincy, made adjustments off Buffalo's halftime adjustments, and then it was done again. You know, you can't give up 10 points in play. You can't score 10 points in a playoff game. You can't score 17 points in a playoff game and win. Like, you can't. So I have to say that this is a combination of Dorsey and McDermott. And the reason I say McDermott is because I think you need to fight for I think you need to fight for your roster a little bit more. Buffalo kind of stayed stagnant in a lot of positions, and those positions really hurt you this year. Right? Like that. they didn't work to improve the positions when they knew they had a deficit. And I think that's a McDermott. That I don't blame Bean for that. I think Bean's always looking to improve the team.
Yeah.
I think McDermott is a lot about culture and earning it, and I think sometimes that makes him defend veteran players more than they deserve.
Yeah.
So that's where I sit. What do you think?
DF is still on you for it.
So is that the OC?
You just gave him the most McDermott hashtag answer ever.
Oh, come on now. It wasn't all that.
No, I understand. I think that, I mean, I could be wrong. I agree to a degree. I agree with you, but I think Dorsey got manhandled mentally in this game. His script sucked.
Yeah, script.
I think the script was awful. I think you had no answers for
you ran 3 offensive plays.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
I think you got mentally manhandled by the defensive coordinator for the Bengals. What's his name? Ariane. He said his name during the broadcast 17 times. I was too upset to even think. But the point was, no, I didn't get that upset actually about the game. I was just like I said at the onset, I was waiting for the Bills to just start turning it on. Most of the day, they're playing like dog water. They're down or they're up or they're down. And then they just score 14 points. And you're like, okay, I guess they're back in it. It was stuff like that. Yeah, that 3rd and 4 was atrocious. We will cover a lot of the things. And obviously one of the first things that we're going to cover, Paul and I are going to hit the whiteboard pretty hard and try to figure out where we can finagle some money initially. But as you know, the cap is set to go up, and it's projected always to go up at least about $10 million. So that will wipe out the current cap for the Buffalo Bills, which is they're 8.5 over. So that'll wipe that out. Draft classes are usually around that, but with only 6 picks, trading back obviously lowers your rookie draft pool as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things you have to look at as well. If they trade out of that first round pick and they pick up like a first the next year and like another 3rd or something like that, I'm just guessing it'll lower your draft pool numbers, but they do need body. This is one of those, scenarios where we talked about it all the time with the New Orleans Saints. We talked about it with the Falcons quite a bit when they were paying Matt Ryan a lot. You need bodies and you need cheap bodies. And the cheapest way to get that is through the draft. So we're going to go through all of that stuff.
Mario, I think that, as Bills fans, there's going to be a lot of news of coach firings, right? Because after a team gets bounced in the playoffs, coach firings happen right away. Because there's no reason to keep them through the scouting process at that point, right? So there's no reason to hold on to coaches that you're going to walk away from. David mentions Eric Washington needs to go, lists off the resources that Bills have put in across the defensive tackle position, defensive line position. Hey, listen, I understand why Eric Washington would be a target as a position coach, right? Yep. With that being said, Aaron Cromer fits right in that mold with me. So what other position coaches do you think walk away or enter Tuesday without a job?
I don't know if about without a job, obviously. As I talked about before, Bobby Babich, who is the son of Bob Babich, who they were coaching together. But where'd Bob go? Did Bob go to the Giants?
I
don't know. We can check that if you want. But I mean, I think not so much firings, but I think guys move around. Like if
they have to be let go of their contracts are like they got to be fired first.
No, I'm saying if Frazier is to go, if he gets another job somewhere or he retires or whatever, I think Bobby Babich is probably your next guy up in line.
I don't think McDermott will go somebody that's not seasoned.
If he wants more control, he definitely will.
Bob Babich retired.
Oh, he did? Okay. So he retired. There's a bunch of different things that can go on. I am 100% in agreement with you due to what happened today, what's been happening all season. Washington and Cromer are number 1 and number 2. You don't really go after coordinators this early in the campaign because if you go after coordinators this early in the campaign, there's only one more guy to get fired.
Yeah. Well, no, I understand. I understand that. Right. Sonny Lamont says, what a disappointing loss. McDermott isn't the coach to lead us. We need a guy with the ring. Hello, Sean Payton. Sorry, I'm so frustrated. And Sean Payton is, of course, going to be, Sean Payton is, of course, going to be a name a lot of frustrated people who've never liked McDermott are going to certainly navigate to. I will tell you this team can't afford to give up those first round picks. And I will be honest with you, trading first round picks for a coach, I don't know if any team can really afford to do that. That is also in a head coach search.
G-Rock once wasn't enough. You want him back?
God. Well, I also saw Greg Roman. Like, those are guys we want to improve the passing game, not kill it.
Yeah, exactly. If I had my choice, I mean, if they kept who they have now, if they kept Dorsey and they kept Frazier, I'd have to live with it. But who do I want in those respective positions? One of them you're going to roll your eyes at me, but the other one was in the chat. Frank Reich.
I actually don't mind that.
I would love to have.
He was a very good offensive coordinator.
He's a coordinator, yeah, right. Coordinator, not so much a head coach. Some of those guys are just better as coordinators.
Right.
You know who I would take on the defense instead of Leslie? Only guy I would take on defense instead of Leslie Frazier. Vic Fangio.
Oh God. Okay, that's the eye roll right there. That's the eye roll. It's but when you have coordinator terminations, right? When you're going to fire a coordinator, it's a systemic issue because you also have to look at the fact that you brought in a ton of resources to make Ken Dorsey successful as an offensive coordinator.
You did,
right? You brought in Joe Brady, former offensive coordinator. You brought in Mike Shula, former head coach and offensive coordinator. Yes. Right? These guys were brought on to the offensive staff to make Ken Dorsey successful, and it does make you wonder where the recipe went wrong. Right? Was it one? Did you give him too much help? Did he have too many people in his ear? Is he just really not skilled enough for the position? That's where Beane and McDermott have to make that decision together, because while this game does make it look like you could fire Ken Dorsey, you got to understand the Bills were a top 3 power ranked team the entire season. So Ken Dorsey didn't do all that bad a job, right? No. But the staff that you gave him to try and make him successful, is that what happens first, right? Do you believe in Dorsey enough to say, well, Mike Shula couldn't keep his damn mouth shut, and we're not going to do that here. So we're going to let that go, and then we're going to give Dorsey, another crack at it. I don't think you fail in keeping Ken Dorsey, but I think where Ken Dorsey failed was, some limitations because of the roster. The wide receiver position, we had talked about this offseason, was weak. And needed to be addressed. And the needed to be addressed was to sign Jamison Crowder, who I was really excited about, but didn't even make it out of the preseason.
No. And it's funny too that the names that we've been talking about so much have been Dorsey and Eric Washington.
Yep.
These coaches hire who they know, man.
Yep, that's true.
Stop hiring people you know.
Eric Clark makes a great point. He says if Frazier gets a head coach job, we pick up a conditional pick.
Hey, it is true.
But again, it does make you wonder if that's going to impact if a coach like Frazier is retained or not.
Well,
right?
Then that just opens up any NFC job, whoever's in the NFC.
Yeah.
Because an AFC team will not give a pick to the Buffalo Bills.
I totally agree with that.
They will not do that. Nope.
I totally agree with that.
No. And
especially like head coaching, because it's what is a 3rd round pick?
2.
It's second.
2 third round picks. 2
third round picks.
You get 2 conditional 3rd round picks if Frazier signs with some gets a head coaching job somewhere. Which is probably why one of those like little things that a lot of people don't know. It was a great point. Probably one of those things a lot of people don't know, that why he's probably not been given a head coaching job.
Mm-hmm.
That's if the Bills were 3-13, they wouldn't care about hiring Frazier.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? That's interesting.
No, but what I'm saying is, hashtag Nation and Bills Mafia, we are all upset that the season is over at this point. And I understand your frustration and your pain. However, we, as Bills fans, overcame a lot this year, starting from the beginning of the season all the way up until this point. We have some things to build on. Paul and I will try to break down as much as we can, driving around, drinking Tim Hortons as we can. As always, you can find all of our content, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, as well as iTunes and Spotify. Tonight's show is sponsored by Mr. Rogers Homes. In the description of the video, you will see his link. Go hit that up, as well as in association with Crier Media. Paul, this is the last post game of the season. I'm sorry that we're not going to have another post game for a while, but you do get to sit shotgun with me, brother. So
I know. I don't, you know what? It's the one thing that honestly makes this thing kind of tolerable is the fact that we get to get back in the car and I do love those car
The
episodes. So
10th year of driving your butt around.
yeah, yep, that's it. Driving Miss Daisy.
Yes.
Let's go.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen of Hashtag Nation Bills Mafia, thank you for joining us for the Hashtag Sports presentation of the Bills versus the Bengals post game. We love y'all. Enjoy your evening, and we are out of here.
Hello, fellow Bills fans. Sean Rogers, Realtor and lead of the Mr. Rogers Homes team. Did you know that real estate is one of the best ways to build wealth, and right now is one of the best times to own an investment property in Arizona? Please reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to answer any of your questions so we can take the next step to your financial freedom here in the Valley of the Sun, utilizing real estate. As always, God bless America and go Buffalo!